How are we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Shaun Attwood channel. I'm Ron Swanson, and I'm here with Lennie, and we're going to be jumping into Lennie Moreno. Sorry, Moreno, as I forget my guest name, but that's the way it goes sometimes with ADHD. But we're going to be delving into, amongst other things, angels, trumpets. I think a lot of us know these by other names. We'll wait until we're 10 minutes in before we start referring to them. But Lennie, introduce yourself. Tell us a little about your story and your journey, and of course, what we're here to discuss.
Absolutely, and I appreciate
Oh,
your
wait.
time.
Yeah, man, I appreciate your time.
Yes. So I am Lennie Moreno. A little bit about my journey. I started being an entrepreneur pretty young, and I had a few successes. One of the companies that helped, let's call it, bring some level of freedom is a company called Sofdesk that I founded, and it helps small and medium contractors to be more efficient with their work. So when COVID hit, it was a pretty big deal. We were around 70 to 75 employees. We went through 2 rounds of financing, and then a lot of big companies, they knocked on our door. They were asking about us for some mergers and acquisition potential. And from there, we sold to Enphase Energy, which is a public company, in January of 2021. And then from there, I had a lot of options and a lot of choices or routes that I could take. And one of my passions was fashion. But I didn't want to just go into fashion just for fashion. I wanted to see what was the problem in the industry and what was the problems in the industries that I was passionate about. So I decided to go over to Europe, and I met a lot of suppliers, manufacturers, and I got the opportunity to meet a lot of interesting people, a lot of connected people, and I got to learn the ins and outs of how dark the luxury fashion industry really is. And from there, I said, how do I start a brand that swings back against the idea that luxury fashion is, all roses and all beautiful, and they spend so much money on marketing to polish everything and to make everything look nice and shiny. But when you look behind the curtain, it's actually pretty dark. It's pretty satanic. It's pretty demonic. And there's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of greenwashing. There's a lot of devil worship. And then from there, well, I said, you know what? I'm going to build a company that has integrity up and down the chain. So vertical integration from finding the fabrics all the way to the design, to the production, to the people that I select to do the production. They have to vibe with the same values, the same pro-human values, self-respect, strength, reconnecting with nature. And then from there, I found the place of Ëlms, and now it's been growing. There's a lot of demand for it, but ultimately, to go back a little bit before that, it's about when did Lennie got his awakening, and when was what's happening in the world started to be more and more important. And I would say that we have to go back to when Building 7 fell down in September of 2001. And that's where I started to ask questions to would the government really do this? And that was kind of like my first research about how the world works. And I always had it in the back of my mind. And I was like, there is something wrong with everything that we're seeing. So when COVID happened, fast forward almost 20 years later, right away, I started to be vocal. And I was running a company with investors, a board of directors. It was, there was a lot at stake. And but I started to swing back, and I started to be public. And I released a music video called Wake Up. And that was, I believe, in May of 2020. And in there you see like the Epstein files, you see like child trafficking.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pull this up, Lennie.
Yeah,
it was called Wake Up, right?
Wake Up. Yeah, Wake Up. And And essentially, all the people around me, they thought I was crazy. They were like, what is going on with this guy? You know, he's supposed to be like a tech guy who's like entrepreneur, gives these speeches all over, you know, the universities, and he's supposed to be like a well-present, and he's doing this, you know, and he's like swinging back, and he's like fearless, but he's nuts. And, you know, I got called to the boardroom like multiple times and say like,
This
hey,
is you. This is you here, Lennie, right? I've got the right. This is the right Lennie. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell
So,
yeah.
yeah, and you know, I got brought into the boardroom, say, "Hey, Lennie, like we don't really know what's happening with COVID and this, that," and I was like, "No, we know what's happening. They're trying to screw us over. They're trying to take away our rights. A vaccine will be coming, you know, and so on and so forth."
Well, this is like a legit music video. Like
Yeah. No, I don't half-ass things. Like
you just
everything
like
I
stand
do.
up? Did you just like stand up one day and go, "I fancy writing a song," and then just put out a song like this? Was that how this went, or was there music before that?
Yeah, no. I was always doing music.
Yeah, you're always doing music. Okay.
Yeah,
This is sick.
it was like therapeutic.
Don't forget, oh no. Don't forget, oh no. You can't forget.
Hell yeah, lady.
Oh no. You can't forget. They don't care about us. It's all about control. Are you just gonna take it?
Nice, mate. Nice. And
Yeah, so,
again, like it's legit looking, bro. It sounds great. And I guess that was you tippled then. It was like you peeked under the blanket that we were so tightly tucked under, and you seen what was really going on, right?
You're absolutely right. And I started to, you know, I was almost like a repellent for my friends, you know, like my friends kind of all, you know, disappeared slowly. And a lot of people were, you know, were starting to lose faith in me. And even to the point where I believe there was a board meeting at some point where they seriously asked the question, like, is Lennie fit, you know, to run this company to the, you know, to the finish line and like bring us an exit and like a successful journey. But ultimately they voted for me because I think I have this way to lead, and I have this way to, you know, to motivate people. And I'm a pretty business savvy guy as a whole. So
plus you've got a music video where you're clearly burying something in a plot of land. Okay. I imagine they're all thinking, I don't want to do that. I want to be in that plot of land. You know what I'm saying? But it's good. It's stuck by you, man. And they must have obviously seen the vision and the journey, right?
Yeah. But instead of like slowing down, I sped up and I released another video called "They Won't Divide Us," when the churches were closed, but you were allowed to go and protest for Black Lives Matter, which didn't make sense to me. So I went and I infiltrated this church, this big church, and I got the blessing of a priest saying, "Oh yeah, you're gonna talk about that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You can have the entire church." And you know, we ended up filming in like 5 hours. We did a beautiful music video. And after that, I released Freedom, and I released some other stuff, because ultimately the goal is just to show an alternative reality, and, you know, to get people interested that whatever the mainstream media says, it's not always accurate. And in most cases, it's not accurate. It's to guide our perception. It's to control our mind. So, you know, it was my way of like swinging back without doing like what I'm doing right now, like, you know, pretty seriously, because now my following has grown tremendously. You know, just in Meta, I think in the last year, I'm now at like 1.2 million or something.
Yeah, across your platforms.
Yeah, because it's powerful videos that people share because they gravitate and they're like, you know what, I understand what this guy is saying, and it's not crazy. It's actually pretty, you know, it's pretty accurate.
You see a lot of truth in music, right? When it's independent artists, you know, when it's not somebody who has anything to answer to, or it's something that I think people are crying out for. I think across the board, when it comes to the internet, people are just looking for authenticity now. They're not wanting like this foolery that we've been exposed
this like cookie cutter. And I think that it's an important point, is that from my analysis of the financial markets, I believe that within 10 to 15 years, we will hit a value-based economy. And I believe that more and more the world will gravitate towards brands, artists, even politicians that have the same values, but without the foolery, because real recognize real. And I believe that the majority of the world that have good in their heart, they feel when something's real. They gravitate towards it because it's the same frequency. And same frequencies, they kind of vibe together. So as long as it's authentic and there's integrity behind it, I believe that everybody's going to move eventually towards a value-based economy. They'll research every brand that they buy instead of just like, oh, it's hot. I saw this ad and, the marketing is amazing. It's going to be more like, let's look at the top shareholders of the private equity firm that owns the majority of this company.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are shifting to that. I think people want as well to be able to go and ask about a product. I think that's something that's missing a lot from these days, is leaving the freaking house for one and going and being an informed consumer. It doesn't happen as often as we think, and
and I will even add that consumers have to be aware, because what happens is that there's a lot of clean brands out there, specifically in the food industry. And what happens is that they gain the trust of the people and they grow and they scale and everybody is buying it. But at some point, there's a merger happening where a larger conglomerate will come, swallow that company, and then they're going to start to dilute certain ingredients. They're going to start to change the composition of what was initially a nice intention, a beautiful product, into something that fits their agenda, that fuels the cancer generating, pharmaceutical cartel. So this is one thing that we have to look at ingredients. We have to research who owns what, even if it's a brand that looks clean and that used to be independent, everybody slowly gets swallowed up. And we have to support our local farmers, our small and medium businesses. And that's essentially, it's part of the ways to fight back, is really to support each other within the community.
It's a scary one that you mentioned, the farmers. The farmers, I think people need to pay more attention to. In the UK, we've got it pretty bad where the farmers are becoming pushed out of their own trade. But in the States, there is the whole Monsanto crop madness, right? I mean, Lenny, to me, it makes sense that you've had the plants that have been evolving for billions and billions and billions of years, have it down to a pretty fine art, how they, germinate and do all these things. And do you think that the weaponization of fear, right? Because obviously these crops have led to, there'll have been some drought or something that'll have happened that'll have made these a great selling point for farmers and blah, 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 blah. But when it becomes the only option, are we seeing just repeating tactical use of fear being pushed upon us to make all these changes?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the fear. The fear is also a frequency that I believe the ruling class is keeping us under the frequency of fear, where they will put us in a perpetual state of fear, and then we will be looking for solutions that they offer. But usually the solutions that they offer are the worst ones. And that's the, 3-strike perception circle that they got us in, is that there's always some level of fear that they have to keep us under, because fear is a low frequency that feeds into this kind of like evil, like apparatus. And I think the trick is to kind of disconnect from everything that we've learned and everything that they told us, and look at things from more a critical thinking perspective, where it's like we look at things fundamentally as like, okay, did God made a mistake into creating everything that we need in order to heal ourselves, in order to feel better, in order to feel light, in order to remove anxiety, in order to remove stress, in order to remove fear, in order to embrace love? And look at these things more in a way that like we have to not look at it the way that society is saying it, which is like, oh, this is like woohoo and this is like, spiritual bullshit. It's like, no, this is real things that actually exist, that actually work. And they've tried to convince us by hiring all these scientists and, medical doctors and bribing them and so on, to put us in a place where it's like, that's the authority, and the authority knows and you don't know, you're just a little, Philistine. What do you know about this? Science is talking to you right now. Like, who are you? So this is where we have to swallow back the power and find it within ourselves that, no, it's okay. We can swing back, and we don't have to take everything that's being fed to us as money. We have to take it as like, okay, I appreciate you trying to help, which, historically you have not helped at all. You have only like pillaged and raped and destroyed and trafficked, but I will do my own research. Thank you very much. So, yeah.
Well, the globalization, it feels like it's etching ever forward. Hang on 1 second. I keep getting this wire keeps making a noise. Lenny, there we go. I was talking to a guest last week about. It feels like we're getting used to incompetence, right? We're used to the Epstein files being released and no one being arrested. We're used to, all these things. 9/11 is another prime example of cover-ups and being fed false narratives. It feels like I'm used to being let down, and I feel like I'm used to accepting that level of incompetence. Are we witnessing a purposeful level of incompetence so that they can then usher in a new way of governing us all? I feel like this war is going to spread further. There's going to be a catastrophic event, and we're going to want to remove human error from decision making for mankind, right? It feels like it's coming. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting point, because ultimately we have to look at it like, why are they allowing these files to be public? Why are they allowing us to see it, but to also see that there's no repercussion and that real justice doesn't really exist? We are looking at situations where, homeowners, they have a knock on the door, and it's the cops saying, hey, you said something on your social media that is not acceptable.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the same cops are supposed to go and arrest some of these people on that list that provably have done something horrible.
Yeah.
So they're showing us that we have to bow down, and we have to acquiesce to whatever that they're presenting. And their goal is to show us, like, look what we can do, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So this, on a spiritual level, they're putting us into a state where we feel powerless. And this is where we have to find ways to retrieve our power, because a lot of the, truth seekers and speakers online, they're really inclined to doom and gloom, and nothing's being done, and I'm mad, and can you believe that this happened? And on my content, what I'm trying to do is I try to explain it, but at the end, I always try to offer a solution. I'm always trying to empower, because ultimately what they're showing us is, hey, little Philistines, you have no power. We can do whatever we want, and there's no consequences. But if we look at things differently, where they want us to believe that we have no power and that we are divided and there are problems out there, then that's the state of mind that we're going to live. But if we shift our state of mind and we realize the true power that we have inside of us, if we decide to unite and change our habits, then real change can happen. And it starts with everything that they've created that is convenient for us. Well, we have to get rid of that, because conveniency is always a trade-off. It's like, I'm going to offer you something that's extremely convenient, but in return, you're going to have to give me your data. You're going to have to give me some level of privacy. You're going to have to, agree to these terms and conditions. And the problem with that is we're there like, oh, you know what? It's really going to make my life like much easier. Like, how hard would it be for the vast majority of us, just to change emails right now, or just to change phones, or just to change browsers?
Bro, if we were to, how long before we all agree to change the colors on the road, the lines on the roads to a new color? Like, how long before we all agree and the lines stay that? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we have literally become too united to try and agree on anything. It sounds crazy, right? But back in the tribal days, when we all had our little tribes and our little parts of things, there was a collective thought in that. And I feel like the modern world has got so much focus on embracing everything, right? You lose grip of what you were, and yeah, it's a mad one, the state of the world, Lenny. It really, really is. And just before you, because I'm really good at sidetracking my own guests and my own entire conversations, right? So
No worries.
I'm going to circle us back because it's been a long time since somebody brought up the wonderful angel's trumpet, or as a word that rhymes with scolopamine, that's used to do very horrible things. And Vice, I'd done a documentary about 10, 11 years ago.
That's right.
Covering this. Did you see the guy? Did you see that documentary? I'm
Yes.
not complaining. All I'm saying is, if I was the guy in front of that camera, I'm talking to the producer about the guide they found me. Okay? Like that. Like the guy, I'm sorry, bro, but there was 50-50 they were getting out with their internal organs and not waking up in a bath of ice. Okay? That's all I'm saying. So before we dive into it, tell us, how you discovered this horror of the world, bro.
Well, me personally, I've only discovered it through the Epstein files, and
Okay.
I'm not going to claim that my knowledge on it is very deep. But I will say that when you start to look into it, you realize that first, it's real. It's not something that they're trying to make us believe that, like, oh, this doesn't exist. It's like, it's a real thing. There's trees everywhere. You can find them in South America. And then when you start to look at the applications of what it means to basically erase the memory of anyone and to get them to do whatever you want, then you start to look at things like MK Ultra. You start to look at things like what they did back in the 60s with the CIA and the Mossad, and trying to control people's perceptions and people's actions. And this plant, the reason I believe why Epstein, wanted a lot of them being delivered on site is basically to have all this blackmail going on, is to whoever a powerful figure was there, whoever consumed it. It's like they don't know that they're being recorded. They don't know. They wake up and they have no idea. And when you look at the dark stuff, like the applications that's happening in South America, more like to the gangs, etc., and then you put that in the context of like an Epstein high level, well presented situation, well, it's definitely the perfect drug that you can use in order to blackmail your targets. So that's kind of how I see it.
It's spot on, and it's known as the drunken tree in some of the places where this grows, and it's even the pollen that comes out of these. They call it the drunk tree because if you stand underneath it, you start feeling lightheaded, and then you'll sit under the tree, and then you'll just have a nap, and that's the scary, and that's just the pollen, bro. Right? That's just the least dangerous part.
Yeah.
And it grows a large cacao, right? And it's the seeds within this cacao that are then processed into a powder, and it's then that powder that is the super toxic stuff. And there's stories of prostitutes who would, put tissue paper up their nose and then put a tiny bit of the powder and then kiss men, or put a little bit on a cigarette and give it to the men, and then tell them to go and empty their bank accounts out and all of this. And the problem is it's kind of deadly, right? It's in the realm of the fentanyl range of how little can kill you.
I absolutely agree with that. And if you look even in places like Cartagena, which I've been, and you walk there at night, and there's a lot of workers, and they look at you like they're civilians, like they are civilians, like they want you to think that they're civilians. And all they have to do is just a little bit in the drink, or offer you a drink, and it's done in such a seamless way where you have to be very careful wherever you are that, politically maybe unstable. It's important to look at what you're eating, who you're with, who you're surrounded by, what are you drinking? Are you covering your drink as you're walking? these are very important things that a lot of people forget, specifically if they get a little tipsy, specifically if they smoke a little bit. They just completely forget what's happening. But this can be the difference between life and death, or waking up with a missing organ. And it's like,
right.
You don't want that. And by the way, if you've seen the movie more recently, it's called Blink Twice.
Blink Twice, yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I think it was snake venom, but was there not a lot of flowers?
It was the flowers.
It was flowers, right?
Yeah, and they would show exactly that flower that they're just, breathing. They made the flower like pinkish to be a bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
But it's the same principle, and they're showing you private island, billionaires island, inviting people over. It's like, it's almost like a contract that they're making to play with our subconscious.
Bro, I can. In fact, you give me your verdict, right, and then I'm going to just take your brain and smash it out the park in a second with this. This is honestly, give me your verdict on this.
Yeah. So my breakdown is essentially, you're very appealing. I think like an Epstein, for example. He's not like a bad looking guy. I'm sure he's very well educated, very well spoken. And then he goes out and he charms people and say, hey, I happen to have an island. And then over there, whatever happens, whatever's being administered in the food and the drinks and the environment, and you can basically get all your guests to do whatever you want. And then they wake up, they have no idea what happened. And I feel that the movie, the way that they wanted to do it is to desensitize us and, to make this almost acceptable. Because when Hollywood is showing us something, it's kind of a gateway for us to be like, oh, you know what? Now I understand. I'm not as sensitive to it. So it's almost like we're accepting it because Hollywood is like glamorizing it.
I'm with you.
I think that's the trap.
It's interesting you mentioned that, right? Because I've got 2 points on this. First of all, I think what we're staring at is the gateway that people would be brought into being abusive, right? So what's the big deal, Lenny? They don't remember it, bro. Like if there's no harm, there's no foul, right? That's install that mindset first, Lenny. If you can convince someone to do eyes wide shut and then sleep at night, then they're ready for the next phase, and they're ready for the next phase, right? But my good man, I'm going to take this one step further, right? Because in the Epstein case, there's a woman, right, that has been effectively left unscathed. And that is Epstein's current girlfriend or current wife or current daughter. We don't really know. Her name's Karina. Now, it seems to me that Epstein died, or Epstein's era came to an end, and his island, his ranch, his money, his properties, his businesses were all left to Karina. And at the end of this movie, we see a female character take over the business and rule it. And it's like, what are they doing? Like one minute you're like, this movie exposes everything, and then you're like, oh no, they've done it again. They've done it again.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. I'm gonna take you one step further as well. Okay.
Hell yeah, Lenny. Let's do this.
So on Netflix, there is a show. It's called The Spy with Sacha Baron Cohen. If you haven't seen it, I highly
I know the one you're talking about. I'm surprised you said The Spy with Sacha Baron Cohen, right? But I'm locked in, Lenny. I'm locked in.
Okay, good. So at the end of that series, they're doing exactly what they did in Blink Twice, which is the guy, historically was hanged. He was found. And then the last scene is the first scene, which is how are we going to get the next guy? And they're showing exactly, and now they've grown, and now they have this whole operation in order to train new spies. And they're basically just telling us, well, we have all these spies out there, and they're infiltrating governments left and right. And that's what it says to me on that.
First of all, I didn't know this even existed.
Oh,
and I thought you were talking about the movie where he plays that over the top like dictator. And it was like a Borat, like another Borat. Lenny, I'm locked in. I don't know where you're going with it. Okay,
this is a serious role.
This definitely looks like a serious role. I've never heard of this. This looks awesome. Apparently,
you will enjoy
he
it.
got ripped for the part as well, because that is all anyone is talking about is how ripped he was for whatever part he's playing.
Yeah, no, he played
Fair
well,
play.
and
Fair play.
and yeah, I would definitely recommend it to the audience because it's
Yeah.
showing you how spies are infiltrating and how people are infiltrating governments. And in this case, he was offered the position of Minister of Defense. He went up to that level where he was like this with the president of Syria. So you look at that and you're like, okay, they're capable of doing that. And then the last scene is like, we're even much further than that now. It's like, okay, so then you look at the US, what's going on there. It's like completely occupied country. So it's kind of like telling you, like, this is how we're doing it.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that things being put in movies and TV shows is just us all exaggerating and imagining things, right? But when you talk about spies getting to a certain level, do you remember the Epstein charges and the fact that there was mandatory sentencing that should have been in place with, transporting an underage girl and then having, relations with her? And he got 6 months and he was released, and it was the DOJ that forced that verdict on the court. And the only person that can do that, give DOJ orders, is the president, right? So when you start seeing the Epstein files and you start thinking, well, how Pam Bondi has dealt with all of this and how Kash Patel has dealt with all of this, do you see repeating patterns in specific positions that seem to always have that loose chain when it comes to making competent decisions like this, for situations like this?
Yeah, I mean, my personal verdict when I analyze the US politics is to basically look at who benefits from these decisions. And when you always look at things in that sense, and I'm talking worldwide, the news cycle, investment decisions, war decisions, even as far as pandemics, who benefits from doing that? And when you look at the situation with, the head of the CIA and the FBI and the bad decisions that they're doing, you just realize, like, who's benefiting. And the people that benefits, it's never the victims. The victims, they it's almost like they don't exist. It's like everything that happened to all these people, it's like, that's not what's important. It's almost like their mandate is to protect the people in power. And that's their mandate, is no matter what they say, what words they use, what laws, they introduce, the bills that they introduce, it's always who does it protect and who benefits. And you look at it and they're not in the business of helping people. They're in the business of protecting the order of things. And they have to come up with some variation of a story in order for things to just, make it sound believable.
Right.
And when we look at it, we're like, well, yeah. And like the more that they enforce it and the news is very powerful, and people forget that, they will repeat until it sinks in. And at some point, be like, yeah, okay, I guess, it's on to the next news. And then there's always like a more intense news cycle happening. So we just forget about the Epstein files. Now it's about the war. Now forget the war. The oil price is like going off the roof. And now there's going to be a financial crisis. And how am I going to pay my mortgage? And then you start to go down that line, and you completely forgot that, like, literally a few months ago, we're talking about child trafficking by, very powerful people.
Human jerky. Oh, don't forget about the human jerky, bro. Do you know what I'm saying? And it is wild. And do you think? Sorry. Yeah, carry on, Lenny. Carry on.
No, so I just wanted to say, and to get back to the Hollywood perspective that you brought up, like, why are they doing this? Another movie that you can watch is called Contagion. I believe it was made in 2012. That's with Matt Damon and a superstar cast of actors. Like, all the top actors are there. Why would you hire all the top actors to show us exactly what happened during COVID? And if you haven't seen Contagion...
I've not seen this one either, Lenny. Lenny, I'm telling you, bro. You can come back again. You can come back again. You're on a short list of people that is bringing up stuff I've never seen that all looks awesome. So here we go.
This is I believe it was 2012, and it's exactly what happened in COVID. And what was the main goal of this movie? What was the only thing that could save the planet? The vaccine. And how they made the vaccine the solution, and how they glamorized the, the medical establishment, the scientists. And then in there's Jude Law. Jude Law, he plays the conspiracy, like Alex Jones type of podcaster. And he plays that. And he's the guy that's being like followed, and, his life like turns to shit. And it's literally like, it's telling you like, don't seek for the truth. Science has the truth.
Science. Yeah,
and
right.
They're drilling that into our brains from 2012, ready for when the real.
So, do you think we should look at this as like a 10-year warning, right? Like, so if we were to look at a movie now, because we're about to get Disclosure Day, bro, right? Like, have you seen this movie that's coming out, Disclosure Day?
No.
Well, this is going to give welcome to your new like night terrors. Okay. Okay, welcome to like what you're gonna wake. When you wake up, you're like, right? It's gonna be like this, bro, right? Because it's Spielberg for a start, wonderful, super cool with the kids, Steven, weirdo, and it's full on like aliens, mind control, MK Ultra, and it is your whole body just goes, oh no. Okay. That's what it makes me feel, bro. It is. I would play the trailer now, but they just copyright claim you straight away. You need, when we finish the live, we'll watch it before you go, because I need to see your face reacting to this.
I will give you my honest opinion, but to answer your question about is it the 10-year gap?
Yeah,
I think the answer is yes and no. There are some that they need to prepare you in advance, but there are others where they're basically just trying to infiltrate your brain in order to make you accept certain things, so that your perceptions of what needs to be empowered or what needs to be glamorized, well, they put it in the movie. And I'm going to give you an example where there was a big movie with Leo DiCaprio that came out. It was nominated at the Oscars. I don't remember the name, but it's basically showing how weak men are, and how like the real power is like this this black lesbian who is like walking all over her man, is leaving her child, and that's like the empowering thing to do. And you look at just like little things happening, and it coordinates directly with everything that Agenda 2030 has, everything that the World Economic Forum is pushing, all this gender fluidity, all this acceptance of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, climate change. Like, they always find ways to reinforce their points through Hollywood. So yes, there are some big events that has like a 10-year cycle, but I would say that most of the movies that I'm analyzing when I'm watching them is like, no, like these are all things that are happening right now, and they're just reinforcing it. But now it's just becoming like ridiculous, because a lot of people woke up and like, why do you have to shove like all this in my face constantly? So that's my
I mean, I think I would agree with you, and I think there's so much that just gets rubbed in our faces in these movies and in music as well. Somebody had said in the side chat, and Goldie has said, surely not getting a 10-year warning, more like 2. I think when it comes to COVID and the Jeremy times, I think that's quite a massive global operation. You know what I'm saying? And I wonder how many countries, movies that would put the glamorization of a global cure and the statistics of those countries likely to push back against it. I wonder if they line up with how many movies came out in the previous decade about softening that. Because there's a system here. Don't get me wrong, it sounds mad. It's proper pictures on the wall with a red string scenario, Lenny. Do you know what I mean? But there is definitely a very powerful system when it comes to planting seeds in our heads, Yeah.
And this is where I think like one of the advice that I love to give to my audience is, it's important to look at things objectively and look at all the ways that we are being attacked.
Mhm.
One of them is media and movies and the news cycle. Another one is the food. Another one is the pharmaceuticals. Another one is the financial markets. And we have to make our decisions just based on how do we want to live our lives, and how important is it for us to be part of the hype and whatever sounds cool right now, the thing of the moment, or how is that going to benefit our lives? And I think that the most important thing is that when you make your decision, you always have to go back to what's in it for me, my family, my community, my health, my opportunities. And when you look at it like this, then you realize that you're getting rid of a lot of, hyped up things and music and movies and, news cycles and whatever is happening. The more that we give it power, the more that we give it our attention, the more that it draws us in, and it gives us these low frequency, this low energy that this, I will call this evil entity loves. They love when you're in fear, when you're not doing well, when you're scared, when you're anxious, when you're stressed. All these things are emotions that feeds into this kind of apparatus. And it's important to look at what are the things that are high frequencies, from love to joy to, family and friends, and, having a nice time and being connected to nature, and, disconnecting from technology like once in a while, and all the things that makes us happier. We have to make a checklist of that. And every day we have to look at the things that we do and say, on the high frequency things, is there more than the low frequency things that I'm doing? And if the answer is yes, then ultimately at the end of the day, it's a net positive. But if we get drawn by all the low frequency stuff that they keep shoving in our face and in our bodies, etc., then obviously we're going to have a society that's depressed. We're going to have a society that's anxious, that is going to ask for SSRIs. It's going to ask for, the solution for the pharmaceutical companies. So,
but that's the fantastic business model, Lennie. Okay, if you own the companies that the people work for, and you make them so depressed at work that they then have to buy the drugs from your pharmacy that you own, okay, and then they get so addicted to the pharmaceutical drugs that they have to go to the hospitals you own. It's a maddening cycle. It really, because think about it. Why would you want to cure anything at this stage, right? Like your whole medical existence should be like Netflix, yeah? So you can have the basic model, the one with ads, or the premium, right? And they just want to rent your existence to you. And it's coming when it's going to be how far you can expand your life outside a 10-mile parameter around your house. It's going to get to that stage where I feel like we're almost getting to a stage where human creation is going to be reserved for the elites, and we're going to be left. And don't get me wrong, I've made a deal with the AI that when they take over, they're going to make me their pet, Lennie. Do you know what I'm saying? So I've made a deal with the AI. But I think people fear it because they see corporations taking jobs away from people, right? But from an individual point of view, from someone who has no budget to make anything, it's one of the most incredible tools you could ever be handed. It's almost like the internet part 2. But corporations are going to crush us under the weight of their corporate penny pension. Sorry.
Yeah, and I have a few things to say on this, and I think they are very important.
Sure.
I think the first thing is we have to be aware of what's in their agenda. And when I say their agenda, I mean World Economic Forum and whoever is linked to that. And one of the items is called UBI, which is Universal Basic Income. And when you look at Universal Basic Income, it's basically telling the world there are difficulties ahead. There will be, the financial markets may or may not collapse. There may be a lot of, financial strain on the system, and we're bringing on a lot of immigrants. So we're, I'll give you the example in Canada, for example.
Sure.
There's 500,000 new immigrants coming in every year on average. There's 250,000 new house units that are being built. So the price to live goes up, but the wages don't follow, because there's a lot of people that are coming in. They're willing to accept a lower standard of living or wages just because they just fled like a horrible situation, which is understandable.
Of course.
And then you're caught in the situation where you can't make ends meet. And then the government has the perfect card to say, hey, we've been working on this universal basic income. We know that the population is struggling financially. What they will do is they will offer a very appealing amount of money that will come into your account either monthly or bi-weekly. And it may be much more appealing than a lot of people imagine. Let's call it, $5,000 to $10,000 a month. They'll say, listen, we understand. And then based on the amount of kids you have, etc., the amount will vary. And from there, they will say, in order for you to get it, you're going to have to sign up into this digital ID system to make sure that it's you, to make sure that the funds are linked with you, that there's no hacking, because now there's a lot of hacking happening with all this war and, So they'll find a reason in order for you to sign up to digital ID so that you can accept their digital currency, because it's going to be a digital currency. And then what's the final step is the social credit score. So you have the digital ID that's linked with digital currency that's linked with a social credit score. And what do we end up? We end up like China, where if you say the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing, if you're not being a good boy or a good girl, they can click a button and then you don't have access to your funds. They can control you just like that. And that is ultimately part of their goal.
Oh, sugar. I pushed the wrong button, Lenny. Hang on a second.
No worries.
There we go. All right, Lenny, you go, mate.
So what I'm saying is that for anyone that's listening that is struggling financially, I understand. I've been there. I've been in those positions. And my solution was always to try to find ways that my superpowers can be useful. And it takes time, to find your light, to find your North Star, to find what you're really good at, and then really create a pathway that will make it profitable. It takes time. But right now with AI happening, like you said, one of the key things that will be important for humans to do is to find the junction where AI stops. And it's like, here we need human intervention. There's nothing that we can do. And I think that the school system needs to focus on that if we want to survive. Because right now, the education system, they're focusing on things that will be obsolete in 2 years, in 2 months, in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
People are still trying to remember like their table and trying to learn these things by heart.
Like I remember math that involved triangles, Lenny. Like why was there triangles? Okay, just teach me how numbers work. You know what I'm saying? And I get what you're saying. I done like 5 years of high school, right? And that was 5 years of history. And I learned about cavemen and Nazis and JFK. That's all the history I learned about, Lenny. Okay, that was it. Okay. And you're right. And there was a song that came out years ago on YouTube called Don't Stay in School by a guy called Boy in a Band. And he talks about how, we learned this in school, but we didn't learn about budgeting and financing and how credit scores and how all this works and all the rest of it. Like, why do I know the rules to volleyball and basketball and football, but I'm not quite sure what my pancreas really does? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there should be some more focus, bro. Do you know what I'm saying? It's one of those, and it seems offset because when you look at how elites and people who have large sections of money live their life and how they fund their life, it certainly isn't through paying lots of taxes. It's working the system through investments and returns. And it's stacked against us, bro. It really is.
I agree. And the problem is that when you look at who owns the education system and who has forged it and who has structured it, they don't want you to understand how the system works. They want you to serve the system. Yeah. When you get in the education system, it's like a conveyor belt. You put your child, and then it goes through all the steps. And the longer you stay on that conveyor belt, the more the indoctrination happens. And at some point, you come out of universities, and all of a sudden, you're the perfect asset in order to provide value to the current structure of the system. And let me tell you something that I've experienced personally.
Sure.
During COVID, I went to every protest. I was very vocal. I was out there and I was talking to a lot of people. And what's funny is that everyone that I met, and I met thousands of people, I would never meet anyone who's highly educated in the school system. You wouldn't find doctors. You wouldn't find lawyers. You wouldn't find financial advisors or accountants. What you would find is the people. You would find us. You would find construction workers, general contractors. You'd find plumbers. You'd find like all sorts of people that are basically making the world go around. And when the truckers happened in Canada, which was a huge event, then the world realized, like, when the average Joe, they come together, it becomes a real problem. And what did he do to these truckers? As soon as it became very intense and he started to get the support worldwide from GoFundMe, they blocked their bank accounts. They showed you. They showed you.
I remember that.
Yeah, they showed you what they're capable of doing. That if you don't fall in line, they will click a button, and all of a sudden you don't have access to your funds.
Yeah.
And this is not a free country. This is not a place where, I can raise my children and say, yeah, like, we live in a liberal or conservative political situation. It's socialism that is under it's communism that's under the veil of socialism. So they're showing, no, like, we're doing everything for the greater good, but deep inside what they're really doing is they're slowly just implementing this system that I talked about, which is the digital ID that's linked with the digital currency. And this is why in Canada we have Mark Carney, who is the prime minister, who used to work for the central bank. So you have a central banker guy who is there to basically implement the exact system that the World Economic Forum wants for the rest of the world. So people need to be aware of these things, and the way to push back is, you have to go to your elected officials. You have to speak up about it. Like, we can't just acquiesce to everything that they're proposing, because they will make things very appealing. Like I said, with this universal basic income, when things will really be bad financially, a lot of people will jump in. And then what will the media say? Oh, over 60% of the population are in favor because they signed up because they had no choice. And then the rest of the people's perception will be like, oh, well, I guess this is a good thing.
Exactly.
So this is why we have to look at things from afar and be like, no, like, we have to look at who benefits from this. And it's certainly not us.
And they've sort of made an art of making us beg for the things we don't want through their control and their fear and all the rest of it. Here's one for you, Lennie, right? So there's some weird laws and like rules of engagement stuff for wars in America, where if enough shit's hitting the fan, the president doesn't have to step down until all the fan has been cleared. And I feel it's awfully weird that President Trump's board of peace that he set up, where these countries all paid him $1 billion to be part of this new organization that he'd founded, just so happened to mainly surround Russia and China. Okay. So it's a weird one, right? So do you think that the larger plan, right? I'm going to give you two options here, Lennie, right? And you can tell me which one you think is more likely. Is this a move to try and create a one world government, right? Through a massive world war, making us beg for unity because if we're united, we can't fight each other, blah, blah, blah. Or are we just going to see this fizzle out like it has every time before? We'll see oil prices go up. We'll see the Epstein files be swept under the carpet, and business will go back to as usual. Or do you feel like we're genuinely witnessing steps forward in a new world order, conspirafact?
Yeah. I have multiple opinions on this, but
I know, right?
I'm an optimist, and I always have super high hopes for humanity. I always believe that eventually there will be a shift. Right now, on the chessboard, what we have is a situation that is directly creating a one world government, which, if it turns into World War III, which I hope it doesn't, but a lot of the pieces to the puzzle seem like, I'm not going to say it's inevitable, but I will say that it's likely that the conflict will escalate to a point where it gets bad enough that they can implement all the things they have in their agenda, which is this kind of one world government, digital ID system, universal basic income, because things will get really bad, specifically on the financial markets. And if you're not well diversified right now, or if you have the opportunity to diversify, it would be a good moment, in my opinion. And I'm not going to give any, financial advice or anything, but diversification is always good in situations like these. And then when you look at how they're manipulating every step into creating this one world government, then the only thing that's left to do is look at, okay, well, why are they doing it and who's benefiting? And the people that are benefiting is the people that functions without borders. We look at the world with borders and countries, religions, races, skin color. We look at all these things and we're like, oh, well, these are all the things that are, dividing us. We're all different. But the people in charge, they don't look at the world in the same way. They look at things without borders. They look at things with no religion. All this stuff is for us to consume to stay divided. But the decisions that are being made at the top, in my personal perception, is borderless, it's religionless, it's it has nothing to do with the world that we see. It has to do with how can they control the maximum amount of human beings, which to them, what we are is like in the Matrix, we are a battery. And how can they drain that energy in order to serve the system that they're creating? So for us, they don't care if we're white, black, or Muslim, or Christian, or Jewish. They don't care about any of that. They look at us like a battery system. And how much can I drain from this big battery that is the world in order to serve my ambition? And it's always easier to control the world and control our perception if everything falls into one pot. So there's no difference. It's all, we're just a whole bunch, like billions of NPCs. They press a button, they control our perception. And the next step to that, which I was getting to, is Elon Musk's Neuralink. And now, I don't know if you're aware, but they are making human trials in real time. There are human trials that have been successful. And you can even find it in a Mr. Beast episode that I've exposed in one of my reels, that they're glorifying it, they're glamorizing it. It's like, look, there's this paraplegic person, and we can put this brain chip, and now, they can do some basic tasks, and this is going to evolve. And they're always trying to pull on our heartstrings in order to say, this is going to help the world, this is going to help communities. But if you look at the real agenda of how they want to control everyone, ultimately as a battery, is to the control of our perception. And once they get in the body, once they get under the skin, this is where I believe that it's their end game. Is, we have to say a categorical no to whatever that they're proposing that will be like, no, this is really going to help you. And first it's being pushed like, oh, it's all these, the paraplegic people, they need it. It's going to be helpful. They can walk again. And then, the people that can't see, they'll be able to see again. So everybody would, oh, it's so nice and it's so beautiful. And they're always trying to pull on our heartstrings. But their real agenda is to make it worldwide, where at some point, some people will have it. And then, oh, well, the level playing field is not fair because they have it. They have access to all this data. And then these kids don't. So we have to get these kids on it just for them to be able to compete.
You're literally describing every cyberpunk style movie in the world, where you have those who have assimilated and those who haven't, right? And here's the thing, right? Because this is where you and I will probably have a bit of a difference, right? Because it's not the technology I have the issue with. It's the psychopaths developing it and who run it, right? Because we all want little girls with no arms to have cool robot arms so they can live their life. We want all the blind people to be able to see. It's not that's the issue. It's the lunatics in control of all of these things. And, people can argue, we shouldn't mess with creation and how we're born and all of that. And I say, screw all of that, right? If you've got no arms, right, and you can have freaking Iron Man arms, which make your arms better than my arms, I think that's all right. But it's the crazies that control it all, Lenny, because it all sounds like a good idea, right? You know, a one currency that would keep us all stable, and, you know, global this and global that. But it's the lunatics in charge, bro, that ruin it for us all. It's the classic. It's the few that ruin it for the many, and it's really sad, because I've got a funny feeling, Lenny. There's spaceships, right? Like in Star Trek, where they can't interfere until you get to a certain state in your culture, right? And think about how long it took for us to get really fast broadband, because it was bled out over so many years. Our planet's going to be one of the last to achieve warp drive, metaphorically speaking, because the people that are in charge of us are just not here for our benefit. They're here to control, enslave, and profit. And it's a wild hand to be holding, but that's the one we've got, Lenny. That's it.
You know, I will agree to the vast majority of what you said, but I will say this in terms of how they are introducing their products. And like I said earlier, there's always the trade-off of conveniency. And once they're introducing, look, this is going to help for this, and they have this amazing marketing way of introducing things in a way that we will use it, we will buy it, we will consume it. Right. But it's our job to educate the world and to have people understand, like, ultimately, what is the end game of every big product that is being laid out, and who owns it, who are the shareholders. These shareholders are part of what conglomerate, of what secret society, et cetera, so that we arrive to a point where we know that ultimately it's not fully to our benefit. We can use it, you know, temporarily, it's going to help us, but ultimately we have to look at the agenda and who benefits. I made a reel once where I explained, I said, you know, when you look at Fauci and Bill Gates and, you know, Larry Ellison or Larry Fink or any of these guys that have a lot of money, a lot of power, whenever they're in front of the camera, it's always for the greater good and, you know, for your health and for your safety. And we're working on developing all these products that are good for you. And all I wish is that there's enough people that would be able to call them out on stage in the crowd, not just like one, you know, lunatic that they throw out like it always happens, but have like a vast majority of people that are awake enough to just be like, I wish you had the balls to just tell me what your real intention is.
Bro, because listen, they don't have enough balls between them to gather up for that.
I know.
Carry on with what you're saying. I'm going to be quiet. Carry on with what you're saying, bro.
But I would have so much more respect for anyone that's trying to come at us.
No, you'd have bloody knuckles, Lenny. You'd have bloody knuckles, okay? You wouldn't have any understanding. You'd be like, all right, you and me in a field. Because if the 1% meet the 99% in a field, bro, if it's balls to the wall stuff, we just have to run at them, bro. We just Mufasa the living crap out of them, okay? Stampede style. And that's the reality. But they don't have the balls, Lenny. They don't. That was the worst possible point for you to ask for a reaction there. This is you took a drink there. Sorry, brother.
No. I agree that obviously they don't have the balls, and obviously they will never unveil their plan. My point is that I wish that the world was like this. I wish that everyone would be capable of selling us their ideas with the real intention and the real integrity behind it. But what we're dealing with is a system that is showing you one version for the public to consume so we can buy into it, but they have another agenda behind it. And our job ultimately, and that was kind of my conclusion of the point, is to always look at what is the real intention behind every product. Behind everything that's being presented to us, we have to look at it this way. Because unfortunately, it's not going to happen. They're not going to tell you, hey, you know, with this appeal coating that we're putting on avocados, like it's for your health, you know? They're not going to tell you that.
I'm with you. But here's the thing, right? First of all, I agree. If you were to look at the iPhone 1, right? No camera, no GPS, no tracking, no nothing. And slowly but surely, we now have a tracking device with a HD camera that is constantly on and a microphone that's constantly monitoring us. And we just hand over all of our information. And I was doing a show the other day, Lenny, about a statue in Switzerland from the 16th century, right? And I learned during that podcast that the whole of Switzerland during that time was governed and ruled by the elites. There was they ruled the police, they made all the decisions for the people, they did all of this. And it got me thinking, like, well, later, after elites used to run the world and they were honest about it, humanity must have got too savvy and went, well, no, we want to make decisions. We want to vote. We want to have a choice. So they created the falsehood that we see now. But it was from their honesty and brutality that spawned this illusion that we're in now. And that kind of screwed my head up the other night because I was like, damn, do you see what I mean?
Yes. And I completely understand your point.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's like, I want to leave your audience with some level of hope into.
Oh yeah, sorry. Good luck with that. I'm the worst for that, mate. I'm so sorry. I forgot that you're trying to do that. I'll let you end it on a high note, Lenny. Take us over the rainbow, baby. Let's go.
I believe that one of my North Stars is to empower, is to inspire, and I hope that I can do that. And I hope I was able to do that to some extent. But, if I can leave your audience with some level of hope, which I think ultimately the reason why we're still alive and why we exist is because we always look forward for something. We're looking forward for, better days. We have hope that, there will be great things happening in the future. For example, like we hope that we will have children. We hope that we will get married. We hope that, our project will be fruitful and we're going to make money and we'll be able to experience things and travel and visit. So that same hope needs to be translated even in situations where a lot of things seem dark and that the world is not fair. And in order for us to still see hope is, like I said, we have to create habits every day that we do high frequency things to a higher degree to low frequency things. The things that we consume, the things that we watch, the things that we eat, how we train our body, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's about changing our habits, because every time that we're using one of their products, we're empowering them. Every time that we invest in their stocks, even if the Palantir stock is doing great, we're empowering them. So even if we're making a little bit of money because their stock is doing great, well, it doesn't mean that it's going to create the world that we want. We're just empowering the enemy. So we have to look at all the things that we consume, whether it's on our investment portfolio, whether it's on the stores that we go to get our food, whether it's, like I said, the email service that we use, the browsers that we use. If we use Amazon, it's like, why are we using Amazon when there are local alternatives? For example, in the US, we have Public Square, which is the equivalent of Amazon, but Public Square has amassed all the patriotic, local, small and medium family businesses that offers basically the same things. And it's like, instead of, making the enemy rich, what we're doing is we're empowering the people that vibes with our value and that also wants the same world that we do. So we have to look at all these things and all the little changes and all the little, options that, even if it's tough and even if it's not convenient, we have to make an effort, because if we don't, what will happen is that they will offer us their version. We're going to take their version out of conveniency and out of laziness, and we're going to let that train just ride over us because we didn't make the effort. They're making the effort. So why aren't we collectively uniting and making the effort in order to empower the values that we want in this world? And for that, yes, it means that we have to live on a higher frequency. We have to dig for love and joy and unity and hard work and, things that will inspire. And yes, it's not going to be like a nice, easy ride. It's going to be difficult for us to change our habits. But Dave they've infiltrated us and our daily routine with their stuff, their markets, their products, their services, in order for us to empower them and create the system in which we are in right now. We just have to look at these things. And, you know, for the audience, if you go on my Instagram page, there is a video. It's called How to Beat Them Part 1. There's over 7,000 comments that, because I asked the audience, like, what are some of the things that we can do in order for us to win? And you would be surprised as to the amount of people that would go and write, like, if we change this, if we use cash, if we barter, and there's all sorts of ideas in there that are super interesting and super empowering. And you see that people are hungry for this. People are hungry for this information because it's being suppressed. All we're being presented is the mainstream version. Yeah, use this, it's easy. So
do you think they're stigmatizing traditional values, bartering, trading? You know, you grow the potatoes, my chickens lay the eggs, we exchange that. Do you think that over time they kind of shied us away from it because they wanted us to feel like we were better than all of this, and they tricked us? Because you said when we talk about convenience and laziness, those are the ever married couple that leads to disaster. Convenience combined with laziness, right? And I think you knocked it out the park with that, Lennie.
Yeah, I will say something that hopefully it's not going to get your show canceled or anything, because it's like every time that we talk about Israel or Zionism, you know, it's like, oh, you're not allowed to say this. Yes, we have free speech. We can say whatever we want. We're not being derogatory.
Plus, it's the end of the show. We can edit it out if we need to, Lennie. If it suddenly cuts from here to Lennie saying, thank you for having me, right? You'll know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I feel you. So, you know, people wonder and ask, like, why are Jewish people or Zionists in control of all the major institutions, corporations, etc.? And when you look at how they live, one of their main values, collectivism, is whatever that they create, whatever that they win or learn, it goes back in the community. This is why, you know, the term, like, they stick together. This is true. So when you look at how this culture functions in terms of making business savvy decisions and grow fast and have access to all of these major institutions and have their, you know, their fingers on a lot of high level technologies. They're in the, you know, big pharma, the military industrial complex. You look at all the things and they have their fingers on the pulse, and they take that information back and they give all these power positions to people within the community. It's called collectivism. So why is it that us, the rest of the world that identifies or don't identify with whichever religion or label, why is it that we don't work like that? Why is it that we don't have the same, you know, the same type of value that can help to empower something that I believe ultimately the rest of the world wants? The rest of the world, what we want is, we want to be united. We want to live in peace. We want to have opportunities.
No, I'm with you.
But for that, we have to remove this, you know, this idea that they've planted in our head that it's always about competition. And we always have to be better than these people. We always have to be number one and this and that. And I understand all that. But ultimately, if we don't work together on the fundamentals, on the things that are making us healthy and empowered with opportunities, then we're always going to lose to whoever is working with an idea of collectivism. And that's kind of how I see things, you know, from like a bird's eye view perspective, because everyone is divided. I mean, they have divided us, you know, in a genius manner from all ways. And we're looking at it and we're just like, oh, well, you know, I guess that's just the way it is. And these people did this, so that's why I can't associate with them. But ultimately, this is just for our perceptions. If we remove all this thinking and we start working together and accepting each other, not based on our labels, but just based on the fact that we both have a heart that's good, our soul is still connected to our chest, and we haven't sold it, then we can work together. And I think that ultimately will be the solution if we are to win, you know?
I agree. And do you know what? It boils down to this, Lennie. Community. If you want to know where to start, go and get to know your neighbors, then expand out the way. Bring back that sense of community to where you live, and then just keep it rolling. You know what I mean? And listen, Lennie, it's been a freaking awesome time talking with you, bro. You're a really interesting guy.
I appreciate that, Ron. Thank you.
Really, really interesting guy. And your posts looks absolute fire. So all your links are down in the description. Stick around though, because I want to show you something before you leave. Only take 5 minutes. And if you're watching this at home, wherever you're watching this, please like and subscribe. Make sure that you're subscribed to the Shaun Attwood channel. All the links are down in the description. Of course, go and check out Lennie on all of his platforms. And just again, Lennie, anything you want to say, last thing you want to say to the people, anything else you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that I hope that everyone keeps a smile at the end of the day, and can bring some lightness in their lives, because there's something on the other side of that wall. I know it looks like a big hump, and it looks like a difficult mountain to surmount right now. It's extremely heavy. All the news, all the injustice, there's a lot of things that are very frustrating for us. But if we keep a smile, and if we find the things that makes us happy, that empowers us, that unites us, and if we can change our habits, even if it's difficult, so that we can just better our lives and the lives of our community and work more as a unit, I'm sure that we have a chance, to win and to obviously live a better life.
We are an interesting chapter in the history of man in 2026. But Lennie, listen, thank you so much for being here. Links are in the description. For all of you watching at home, thank you for being here. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to the Shaun Attwood channel. And we'll see you in the next one. From me, Ron Swanson, as always, take care.
Thank you.